As you all know, we got Giant Geo, Zero HP Lovecraft, Stain Haynes in the house, and we've got the great and powerful Marilyn Monroe back from the dead. Great of you to join us, Marilyn. Although it seems like there is somebody behind you. I don't know who that is. Oh my God.
That's no happy birthday, Mr. President. That's
This is like a Nobody TM video. Holy crap.
Welcome to one of my favorite Twitter posters of all time, Thinkwert. Thank you so much for coming in, buddy. I really appreciate it. And I would love to get to know you a little bit better, what you're all about. I mean, for those who do not know Thinkwert, oh my God, there's more layers.
There's more.
Dun, dun,
I don't have any more.
And I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you meddling kids. And I think the meddling kids are the ones that today are trying to stop the kind of content that you are embodying in a strange way, you know, because this whimsy Twitter, well, we're going to get all into it anyway. You know, like we're in an environment right now where it's all about, you know, like, and I think today we're going to have less of the, and more of the, well, you get what I'm saying. Anyway, Thinkwert, you are an English professor, and just go from there. Tell us, how did you become an English professor? Where do you teach? How can we lodge complaints against you to the school board to get you canceled?
I will not divulge where I'm actually at. But I am at a small Midwestern university, private liberal arts, and I've been teaching this is my 17th year teaching here. You can see some of my books of my office bookshelf back there, very messy bookshelf. But yeah, I've been teaching English for 17 years at the university level, and I have a PhD in British Romantics, and I kind of do Twitter on the side.
Why do you do Twitter on the side? How did that start?
I kind of found that Twitter was a place where I could have a social outlet and also be expressive and kind of play a little bit with what I'm doing. And I don't know, I feel like I'm not articulating it well, but I really kind of like the game aspect of it, of you post something, you see to get a reaction, you get nothing. You post something else, it gets a little bit better reaction, so you gotta play with that. You kind of tinker and see what works, see what doesn't work. And you just play with things over and over and over again until you kind of find a stride that works for you. And the Thinkwert persona is basically that, just lots of trial and error over several months until I kind of hit something that worked for me and what I wanted to do.
So you didn't start out doing Whimsy Twitter. In a way, you
No.
kind of, Whimsy Twitter created itself from the egregore, so to speak.
No, I posted William Blake tweets when I started out. I was teaching a course on William Blake, and so I just posted one tweet about William Blake every day. And I did that for about 2 months. And then I started kind of segueing into a little more jokes and things, and did a lot of kind of things with emoticons and emojis. I did things that were just trying to be clever little jokes, but the formula that seemed to work was kind of old images with a modern context joke, and it kind of took off from there.
Why do you think, well, this is actually something I want to ask the rest of the panel right now, just to get their opinion. Why do you think Thinkwert's content, and in general, like what I keep calling Whimsy Twitter, has taken off, especially, I think, I'm not sure, this is just a guess, among all the people who are, let's say, non-leftist? And I could just be completely wrong about that, but just the kind of vibe that I'm getting is that your content, I wouldn't say it's more trafficked to specifically just right-leaning people, but it doesn't seem to be the same kind of Yas Queen Slay energy, if I could put it that way. So I don't know, like a zero HP. What do you think?
I'm not sure who else constitutes Whimsy Twitter, but I could speculate that there is a playfulness and a sophistication to Thinkwert's humor that isn't quite for the mass consciousness, if I may risk being effusive. So there's something about it that is striking to people who are playful, who have a sense of humor. And I think that maybe Thinkwert's academic background is sort of present as a shadow in that work. There's something witty about it, is what I would say.
Stain, do you agree?
Well, I agree, and I'd like to build on what Zero HP Lovecraft expressed, in where it's not. It's easy to see people looking at like a few Thinkwert tweets and like rolling their eyes and groaning and immediately writing it off as like a dad joke, which is kind of a weird catch-all term for like, I suppose, like humor that isn't like East Coast sarcastic, observational, borderline pedantic guy ranting on a microphone kind of humor. Like, I'm not gonna lie, there have been a few Thinkwert tweets that like after the fact or a few minutes after reading, I'm like, that was hilarious. Let me go back. And now I'm like frantically scrolling back up the timeline. But I think I think if you're predisposed to certain kinds of, I'll give you an example. Like if you're partial to something like Rodney Dangerfield, like something like then like Thinkwert's tweets are more likely to hit you than not. I don't know if that makes sense. Because like you could translate Rodney Dangerfield to any language and like people will still get it if they get it, you know?
Well, if they get it, that's the important point here, where I wonder how much this other kind of humor that Zero HP mentioned has become more prevalent in the psyche, especially of young people, where I wonder if they would get the cleverness of certain things, or if that cleverness muscle has kind of worn off. And I want to go back to Thinkwert, since you are a college professor. There are Zoomers around you at all times, so let me know what exactly is the energy, at least at your school, that the Zoomers are giving off. And I would love to get Gio's... Actually, before that, I want to get Gio's reaction to Thinkwert as well. Gio, you've seen Thinkwert. What do you think?
Yeah, he's an OG in the like Twitter humor sphere. I mean, I would love to get a definition of Whimsy Twitter, but I think like the difference, the only thing I can compare it to, I think, would be the sort of like the older, like ironic, like weird Twitter type of stuff that is predominantly leftist, I guess, but there's a weird form of sincerity with Thinkwert's tweets, whereas like if you compare, like, I don't know, who's the top one? Like Went, Drill, you know that one? For some reason, it's like, that's like, I guess, Reddit humor personified. But with Thinkwert's tweets, I guess there's a mind there. And I'm also curious to ask if there's any of like the Blakean influence going on. If there's like an elaborate sort of allegory running throughout. Maybe I'm making too much of tweets, but, well, it'd be pretty interesting to talk about.
Well, we could start with that. So I think, or what do you think? Is there Blakean influence?
One of the things that makes Blake interesting is that he's one of these first artists who really incorporates art with text, and everything that he wrote was accompanied with text and was important to what he was trying to say. In that sense, I think there is some kind of a compliment. I don't think it's necessarily a Blakean ethos to what I write, but there is definitely, I will often try to smuggle in literary references and English professor jokes, things that people who took the Bretlet surveys would get into there. Yeah, I just liked Blake because he's kind of a very unique artist. Probably not all there mentally, but he was just a really brilliant in his own way. And yeah, I don't know if there's too much of a correlation or a connection there beyond some of the kind of broader scope things.
Well, like as an artist and printmaker myself, I always like found his method of like inverting plate etching like fascinating, because he needed that like quickness of reproduction. So he almost like inverted it to become more like relief printing. But what I find fascinating though is like, I guess like I know ZHP has a lot of commentary in this. As someone who's in academia, but particularly I guess a lot of like, you know, grad students and adjuncts that frequent Twitter, there's a whole thing now about like sincerity and irony and new sincerity. And I wonder if you have any like thoughts on if things are changing in that regard, if sincerity is sort of making new headroads, or if those are two monumentally broad categories, or was still like existing within some kind of postmodern ironic framework in terms of discourse. Like it's very.
And I also think that question goes into the student question as well. So whichever one you would want to start with, go for it.
Yeah, those are both intelligent questions. I don't have good answers prepared for either one. I don't know if I have too much of a finger on the pulse of students. I really don't spend a lot of time small chat talking with students that much, you know. I don't really advertise my Twitter to my students. That's kind of a little sphere I keep for myself. But
as far as like what they ask, what they like talking about in class.
I have a pretty good crew, I'd say, throughout the years. I've never felt too much of a hostility or a, oh no, I can't believe these are the kids that are going to raise the next generation or lead the next generation. I feel pretty positive about my students and what I have to deal with. My university, not to give away too much, is more of a conservative bent.
Well, I don't know if that's the reason why. There are universities out there, obviously, like Evergreen, where all hell has broken loose. You would say your university is as far away from the Evergreen type as possible?
Yeah, we're pretty far from that, yeah.
All right, well, there we go. I guess that's the answer. So as far as the authenticity question that Gio asked, what do you think?
Kind of reiterate that question for me again.
Oh, if Sincerity is making a comeback from like postmodern ironic detachment, or if that's really just cope and we still exist within this like weird ironic framework.
I mean, I think it's still there. Part of what I like to do, or at least what I try to do, is kind of counter programming in a way, where you kind of zig where the people are zagging and put things that are not like what everybody else is. I've often said that if nobody talked about politics on Twitter, I'd be the guy talking about politics on Twitter, just because I want to be a little contrarian about it. But I don't see people doing the kind of things that I'm talking about, where it's kind of, let's not talk about the flash in the pan, the politics of this exact second, which is terrible and will always be terrible. Let's talk about the things that will still be amusing 5 years from now, 10 years ago. Those things that are a little more, have more longevity, right? Nothing ages quite as bad as politics.
This is one of my favorite ones, by the way, for those who are listening audio only. There is a man riding a duck as a signpost that somebody erected and has been there for 20 years in a Porth crawl. So yeah, stuff like that. I really enjoy looking at, and
that's real, by the way. That's not a joke tweet. That is something that actually exists. Yeah.
And not to beat a dead horse, but that's a perfect example of like, if your brain puts two and two together and parses the meaning of the joke, like there's no text, like it presents itself to you. Kind of like how, and again, I'm beating a dead horse, but I'm convinced you could take any Rodney Dangerfield joke, jam it through Google Translate, say it to a foreign crowd, and they'll get it. And like that quality, that like evergreen quality, I think is like something that like surfaces over and over with what you tweet and put out, Thinkwert.
More like evergreen with envy, because I don't think they'd be able to measure up to this kind of quality. I mean, I think that is kind of behind a lot of this movements, these movements that we see, where they take a statue down, but whatever they replace it with is never going to be as good. And maybe deep down inside, they kind of realize that, like, you know, we're sitting on the shoulders of giants. All this great stuff has been done before. We can't do any of this great stuff. We're just going to smash it all up. We're just going to destroy. We're just going to throw a hissy fit. I don't know.
If I could chime in real quickly, there's that kind of mentality. It's kind of weird how it bleeds out into things where like, all right, like I know this is probably not the best comparison and it's not even apples to oranges. It's like apples to herring guts. But like, let's say someone is talking about like supply chain disruption and they're like, hey, paying $8 for a gallon of milk, this is no good. And then you have like some awful human who's like, actually it's $6 and change, check yourself. And it's like,
It's your treats.
number one, that's not even the own they think it is. You know what I mean? And number two, it's like, well, even though you're right, and even though the psychic corrosion of economic uncertainty runs down my spine whenever I go to the supermarket, yeah, up yours, guy who said milk is $8 a gallon. There's like a weird like cutting off their nose to spite their face in like replies and replacing things that are torn down. Like never. And honestly, if it wasn't for the internet, these people would be going through your mail and lighting neighborhood dogs on fire. Like there's never proactive, like, you know, I suffered this way, no one should ever have to suffer this way, like outpouring of like effort. And even in the things they express online, it's just like, you know, I know it sounds corny, but like it's toxic, for lack of a better term. It has no redeeming social value. It doesn't bring anything to the table. It doesn't move discourse forward. It's just awful, you know?
Yeah, GHP, you had a comment?
I think there's a critical distance that some people have from Twitter, that they're able to view it as a game. And then there's some people who can't really make that abstraction or that distinction. And they think Twitter is just supposed to be Facebook. It's just supposed to be part of real life. These are the sort of people who are against anonymity. They think that, you know, words are violence. Words are not violence. Like in elementary school, we learned that sticks and stones can break our bones, right? But this lesson is no longer understood. So I think most of the anonymous Twitter, like almost everyone who is anonymous, gets it. They realize this is a game. There are point systems, there are guilds, there are looser and tighter affinities, and this is a game. And then, so Thinkwert talks about his orientation to Twitter as a game. I think that's why it resonates. I think it might even be as simple as that. Whereas if you believe it's really just one more public square where you're your own face, your own person, then you can't get that distance and you can't laugh.
What do you think about expanding that concept not just to the internet but to life in general? That life is nothing but a game, or do you think that that's too however you'd phrase it?
Well, life is becoming gamified, I guess that would be.
That's the opposite, though. That's not life being a game. That's a game becoming life, which is also fine, maybe, or inevitable. I don't put a moral dimension to it necessarily.
Well, in a way, when you play the game of life, there are, let's say, certain elements that I could see being very similar in the game. I don't think it's as much whether we treat life as a game or not, more about how exactly we go about playing that game. So one of those things that Stain Haynes mentioned with the, well, actually, you know, type of humor, I'm not really sure who exactly it's meant to appeal to. It seems very distraught. It seems very draining just to have people like that in your life.
Oh,
so
yeah. I'd say it's mostly cope, but some of it has to do with like I'm sure everyone here has argued with someone, and like even if you have them dead to rights, like they still have to get the last word in, and even if the last word doesn't contribute, even if the last word doesn't emphasize a point, even if the last word doesn't, even if the last word, and notice the last words are almost never "I'm sorry" or "my bad" or "you know what, dude, I meant to say X, but what came out was Y." It's always this like weird parting shot to kind of salve, put salve on their like wounded ego. But real quickly before I forget, there was something I wanted to add in the earlier discussion about sincerity in the post-ironic landscape we find ourselves in, or whatever it's taking shape as on the horizon. I think some people are dropping their facade because like there's burnout of people. Okay, like we live in mumbo jumbo times, and a hallmark of mumbo jumbo times is people playing 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but there's only 1 degree, and Kevin Bacon's whatever you want it to be. Straight white men, Trump, the Third Reich, which doesn't exist anymore. But evidently, I guess all the real Nazis live in America, if Twitter's taught me anything. And if Twitter's taught me anything, Australian is Russian for gulag. So like, I think there's like burnout and people who can't keep up the snark and the reflexive, hysterical, neurotic knickers in a bunch replies. And I think people are starting to like, you know, hey, unless you're living off of the account, unless you're living off of the interest accrued from an account set up before you were born, chances are you're feeling the tightness of like and psychic corrosion of economic uncertainty. And like I live in New York City. Rick Moranis got knocked out in broad daylight last year. Everyone is fair game now. We've gone from cesspool to Singapore in about 25 years, and we're on the way back, baby. So like everything is slowly falling apart, like a 17-car pileup in an abandoned Toys R Us. And like even the money people put between themselves and the noise outside, even that doesn't help. Think of like people spending $4,000 a month in an apartment and last summer, and then watching looters get jacked by other looters at gunpoint. I think everyone I think everyone is slowly, hopefully, collectively realizing, yeah, things are so terrible outside, and we've been doing nothing but rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. You know,
Well,
and I think that's where some of the sincerity comes from. So yeah, I thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Well, speaking of the rearranging of the deck chairs, while I have no problem with people going out to maternal leave, paternal leave, whatever, it's as far as just the visuals go. And again, I'm a big fan of Jessica DeLoach. She's going to be here with
Oh God,
Styx,
you're gonna post that, are you, Lev?
Styx Hexenhammer 666. But when it comes to the person she worked for, Pete Buttigieg, you know, right
The
now
swing?
when there's this, well. Oh no, I'm not going to get into
swing
that.
photo?
But right now, when it comes to the current crisis, when it comes to the shipping lanes and all that, you know, like you read in the history books about, you know, Teddy Roosevelt who got a bullet in him from an assassin and kept making a speech. We have all these examples of leaders who stood up when times were tough, made sacrifices, yada yada. And again, I have no problem with people taking leaves, but I do wonder in certain situations whether people should kind of sacrifice certain things that they would hold in high regard personally in order to address problems. And it feels just like the mood that I'm getting from the people who are high on up is very different from the Teddy Roosevelts of yesteryear. At least that's the way that it seems. So I don't know. Am I reading too much
That's
into
like
it?
one of my favorite Thinkwert tweets is the picture of like these boomers in a kiddie pool. And it's like the like kids like looking off like all disappointed. It's like, this is the housing market. Like, you know, I love that one. That was brute.
Actually, I'd like to know what Thinkwert's favorite Thinkwert tweet is.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's you ever watch the movie The Rounders?
Oh yeah,
The
yeah,
purple
yeah.
one, right?
Yeah. There's a good line in there that it's like the real gamblers, they never remember the big hands they won. The ones that they always think about are the ones they lost. Those the ones that haunt you is the tweets you thought were really good, and they just blow up. And those are the ones that occupy got the headspace. So it's not like if it succeeds, I don't think about it again. It's the ones like, why did that one not work? Why did that one not work? That should have worked. That should have worked. Those are the ones that I kind of ruminate over and over again in there, rather than the ones I thought hit.
What are some of the ones that you would say you really wanted to work, but for some reason it just didn't catch on?
Oh man, I had one. For those who don't know, I post my deleted tweets, the joke tweets, on deleted word. So there's Thinkwert and there's deleted word, and deleted word is where I'll post these ones that don't make. And I had one this week about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that I thought was really going to make it, and it just didn't. It just it died badly. But it's one of those. Another thing, going back to that game idea, is that it all seems to come down to probabilities, right? Okay, I think this one's got 80% chance of working, it doesn't. Or this one has a 10% chance of working, and there it is, and it doesn't work. So that's kind of what it comes down to, is just kind of the slot machine aspect of it, which is why I think it's still kind of compelling to me, because I just don't know. I never know if something's going to work or not work. Sometimes I have a good gut feeling about it, but at the end of the day, you post it, it works, it doesn't work, and then you move on to the next thing.
I can tell you the problem with that Horseman tweet. It's very good, but it's too highbrow. Most people do not understand this literary reference, this literary. That were not the case, but it was, I think, H.L. Mencken who said, "You will never lose money underestimating the public."
American public. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I spent a lot of time on it too. I took the King James and I truncated it so the whole book would fit, or the whole chapter of Revelation would fit into one tweet, and cut things out and just got it just right. I mean, I think I down to the character, and it didn't work. But I'm not don't be too sentimental about these tweets that work and don't work.
This is a great one too. Entors, half plant, half human. For those who are listening audio only, it's basically pants that are full of flowers. So I guess people grow flowers inside of these very nice, very juicy looking, very thick looking pants over it. Yeah. It's,
I can get why that one didn't work. That one, I didn't have a lot of faith in that one. I was like, okay, all right.
If you don't mind me asking, I've scrolled on the timeline, and in real time, I've seen you like delete a tweet that perhaps did not gain as much traction as you wanted. And I'm curious if you have like a set metric you either aim for, or like what if it's gaining at a certain speed, because I've seen bangers and I'm like, the tweet has been deleted. And it'll say like 3M, 4M. It wasn't even up for 5 minutes. So like, I'm curious if you expect like the rubber to meet the road out the gate, or like you expect like, to shift from second to third gear, then it takes off. Like, do you have like, do you have something in your mind's eye that like a track you want it to go down?
The short answer is yeah, absolutely. I start a timer as soon as I hit a tweet, and I keep track of how many likes and retweets it gets. And I do kind of a check at about 2 minutes. I do a check at about 5.5 minutes. And if it doesn't get a retweet at all, or more than 4 likes in 2 minutes, then I know it's not going to work. And sometimes, because I use deleted word, then there's a tweet that I'll delete, and it finds a second life on deleted word. So I don't feel too bad, like I'm throwing away stuff. It just goes into that alternate pile, and if it's good, then it'll find its way up anyway through there.
Does it automatically happen, by the way, that it deletes and you have to manually put it?
I do it manually. Yeah. I keep track, and
wow.
Sometimes if I really like a tweet, I'm like, I'm just leaving it. You guys can suffer through it. But I've actually had to cut back quite a bit because I found I was deleting sometimes up to 85% of my tweets.
Oh, and man.
That's too discouraging. So I've cut back from about 6 or 7 tweets a day to 3. That's my new goal, is about 3. Try to make sure they're pretty good and leave it at that. I'm still working on, I write at least 20, 25 tweets a day. I'm still doing that. I'm just posting less low probability winners now, is what I'm trying to say. It's all very iterative. I hope it doesn't ruin the magic for you all, but it's definitely just probabilities and what works, what doesn't work. Is this a good quality tweet? Do people like this? Did this work? Everything is kind of A/B tested. It's a lot less magical when you put it that way.
Man, I tweet what I think. I use it as like a stream of consciousness machine, or like a sketch before like. Well, I treat it like a sketching almost before an article. Like I'll write a tweet or a thread. Where ZHP here, he's the master of threads. So that's like the end product in itself. But to me, Twitter is almost like to get to something else. But that's like, man, that's cool. That's a pretty organized way of tweeting. Wow. Yeah.
But again, it comes back to the game. It's a game for me, and I'm not playing against anybody. It's just me. When I was a kid, I didn't have many friends. There was a high flat wall by the house, and I would take a soccer ball and I kick against the wall, and I keep track of how many times I kick it without it going away. So kick the ball once, twice, 3 times. Okay, go once, twice, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. No, it bounced away. And then I had a little notebook and I wrote down, okay, I got 6, I got 7, I got 10, and keep track of how much I did it. And my ball handling skills got to be pretty good that way. but I'm still doing it. I'm still doing it at 45, except this time it's with tweets. Okay, keep track. Did this work? This did work. This did not work. And move on to the next tweet and writing constantly. I spend probably 3 hours a day writing tweets, and then try to fire them off and see what works, see what doesn't work.
Wow.
Nice.
Do you think kids these days might be able to benefit from from such activities where when you mentioned hitting a soccer ball against the wall as a kid, I was thinking of pretend sword fights with sticks with other kids in the park, things like that, or how many sticks can I find and bring home? And I remember it was and they had to be sword length sticks, So and I never beat my record of 24. And I tried as hard as I could as a kid. I could never beat 24. And that kind of that carries over and bleeds out into other aspects of our lives, whether we're aware of it or not, So I sometimes wonder if kids these days, because they're already born into this global algorithm-driven marketing and surveillance mind control grid, and they have a pocket screen with them at all hours, they're not collecting sticks or kicking a soccer ball against the wall. So I think they're lacking something in exchange for lending themselves to this thing that they probably have an understanding of this technology better than I do, or any of us do, by virtue of age and being born into it. But Thinkwert, do you think that kids being kids and that being missing, do you think that is affecting them and their approach to education and life?
I think it definitely has a factor. I think I'm always a little reluctant to say things like today's generation is the worst ever or whatever. I know that my generation was often called the worst ever, and well, maybe they're still right.
You're Generation X, right?
Gen X, yes, yeah, Gen X maybe we're the worst. I do know that
I thought boomers were the worst.
Yeah, it depends who you ask. It's interesting that we might not have a Gen X president. It occurred to me, maybe boomer, and then it might jump down a generation, and there'll never have been a Gen X president.
Oh God, a millennial or a Zoomer president.
Right, right.
Where's the meteor when you need it?
The presidents all keep getting older, it seems like. But what was my point? So I grew up without a TV. My parents were very conservative. So what I did was read books constantly. Read a book once or 2 days. Was reading books, and I was out playing. I was out in the forest picking up sticks. I was miles and miles away from home, wandering, taking my bike and riding for miles and miles. And I think that informs a lot of Thinkwert, the kind of things that I was reading a lot of as a kid, as a young boy and teen especially, or all those times I spent out in the wilderness. That informs it. I don't think you're going to have quite that same quality in the kid who grew up playing PlayStation 4 hours a day for his childhood.
Well, speaking of video games, you have, for example, something as impressive as Pokemon with the amount of people it was able to reach. And from what I know, the creator of Pokemon, Satoshi Tajiri, spent all of his youth just collecting bugs. And, it's like you have to take yourself out of this online environment so that you don't create this closed loop system. This is why I'm concerned about when it comes to if everything's going to be VR, if people are just going to be connected to the grid, how could people make anything? It seems, kind of counterintuitive. If on one hand you have the ability to create anything you want now, you can just put all these pieces together, everything's rendered at an incredible speed. Well, at the same time, it almost seems like when you're in there, there's not as many things that could be extracted from this closed system. And it does feel more closed. It feels like there's less of these websites that kind of do their own thing. Everything's very much constricted into these particular social networks, and same thing with culture. So there are few people out there, I think Zero HP, for instance, you're kind of fighting back against it in your own way. But how many different cultures are there really, even on Twitter? Can we just list them on our fingers, the amount of differentiation? Or am I wrong here? Or at least this is the way that it feels.
I think there's more than you realize, but it's invisible to you because Twitter algorithm is designed to silo everyone off and prevent cross-pollination. It wasn't always that way, but ever since maybe about 2015, 2016, they've done some kind of network topology net analysis, decided like the preps are going to sit over here, the jocks are going to sit over here, the mean girls are going to sit over there, and we don't get to change teams. It's very hard. Someone,
and every time there is cross,
tried recently and it didn't go well.
Oh,
and every time there is cross interaction, it's terrible usually in experience.
What? No, Geo, what are you talking about? BTR, this is the cross interaction.
No, every time like some leftist account finds your tweet, or I guess it works the other way too when like people used to go after journalists. It's just like the discourse is inherently
sure they rewrote
tribal.
The terms of service on Twitter because of Weihan. Like before Weihan, you quote tweet people innocuously and it was not considered harassment. And then at some point his account got too powerful and they actually updated their terms of service. I'm quite serious because they were sick of people getting a million like literally all he would do was quote tweet someone and say grandparent. And then they would get 1,000 replies of broken branches and crying old people. And Twitter decided, you know what?
Oh shit.
Wow.
If I could just, I'd like to chime in real quickly on what Zero HP Lovecraft mentioned. Like when Mumbo Jumbo Times kicked off, it wasn't just on Twitter, but like, for example, like around 2015, you click on a video and scroll down, and then you're presented with comments that jive with the sort of opinions you tend to agree with, while making you jump through frustrating hoops of inconvenience to look at all the other discussions taking place. And then like, because like Google and YouTube and like this sort of strategy has already found its way on every facet of like the corporate controlled internet. So then you like, let's say you click on a video of Geo painting, okay? And then all the comments that are either critical of what Geo hates, and then like all the stuff that like, you know, Geo like wouldn't jive with, like they're either buried or they're not immediately presented to you. And like that is like, sometimes you see like as Zero HP said, like now you have like whether they're aware of it or not, like it helps foster people into walking in circles in the desert, but from their perspective it's like they're about to cross the horizon over and over. So like it's what weirds me out on Twitter is when like someone follows me and it's like, this person is not followed by anyone you follow, and it's like, what abyss did you crawl out of like to find my account, you know?
Yeah, I know.
Those are always like the rarest ones. You have zero allegiance to anyone I replied to. What's your deal? But like this weird islanding off of people, like even on Twitter to find stuff you don't disagree with. Like if you don't look outside your timeline, you're just on this assembly line.
Yeah, I mean, take for example Justin Murphy. Not the Justin Murphy you're thinking of, but there is another Justin Murphy. Here is his Twitter account over here. So he is a education reporter. He wrote a book on this history of school segregation, husband and dad. So here, let me just make a slightly bigger image here. So I mentioned Justin Murphy because I wanted to do an event called Murphy to Murphy, or Justin Murphy to Justin Murphy, where it would have him and the other Justin Murphy that we know and love. And he says not interested and have other things to do. So that was a real sting. That was a real heartbreaker right there, because he is not followed or is not following anyone at all within this Twitter sphere over here, and it just makes me kind of sad. But anyway, my hope though is that we are going to have certain people coming on. I was given by Clive, I was given some recommendations for other journalists that could join us for the video game event. And Geo, since you know a little bit more about this, I figure I would just read their names out, just in case spark of inspiration goes into you. Let me know what you think. So, and I actually don't really know who these people are, so I look forward to learning more about them. So there's a Cecilia D'Anastasio of Wired.
Oh,
Geo,
God.
do you know who she is?
Yeah, the Gamergate stuff.
Next
I
we
think.
have Anne Helen Peterson, formerly of BuzzFeed. And last one is Taylor Lorenz.
Oh no! That I don't approve of any doxers, so that's out the window right now.
Is Lev? Are you deliberately picking guests so like Geo is trying his hardest not to
No,
have
because you
outbursts
want
or,
it's like a suicide
throw things
pact.
against the wall?
Because then
Sorry,
BTR
are
will
you saying
kind
Taylor Lorenz is coming on Break the Rules? Did I hear that correctly?
No, these are just some
no,
people
Lev will
that...
like mog her relentlessly till she comes on. Then it'll be like,
Oh no.
I honestly want to bring people together, like I always say, who never get a chance to speak, much like the conversation was going on here, you know, how rare that is and how BTR is actually doing it where nobody else was able to do it before. So I actually think that there is a good chance to get somebody from that sphere in here and to actually have a decent sit down, Soprano style sit down and actually talk about what exactly is going on here. You know, why is there all this divisiveness? Because at the end of the day, I don't know, like, what exactly would they say? What in their minds is this really, really bad thing that they're trying to get rid of, other than, let's say, just like some immaturity and some lighthearted trolling here and there? Like, in their minds, from what I understand, it's a lot more violent than that. It's a lot more mentally scarring than that. But I don't know how much of that is a pretense, how much of that can actually be justified. And again, maybe they're completely different. Maybe they're going to agree with everything that we're going to be talking about in relation to Gamergate. I don't know. But Zero HP, why do you think, and in general, like the entire panel here, what do you think is going on in the minds of people who are from this more professional, woke journalistic sphere? And also, to add on top of that, do you think that the economic changes that are that are already affecting people, do you think that's going to exacerbate it? What do you think is going to happen with the inflation when it comes to the narrative of a lot of people from that particular sphere of the internet?
Well, that's several huge questions. First, regarding journalists and this sort of professional chattering class, I'm sure you've heard, I think it was a term coined by Steve Saylor, the rebellion or the war of the comments section, where basically the internet has created a space where, for the first time ever, journalists and professional opinion makers were able to get reverse feedback from the people they were sending messages to. And it turns out that a lot of those people are smart and the journalists just have a tendency to get owned. Not all the time, there's a lot of people who are really, really stupid too, but it happens, and they can get ratioed and they can get sort of downvoted to hell. They don't like that at all. And I think that the psychology of this type of person is really captured beautifully in an article by one of my friends, the Second City Bureaucrat. I recently linked that on my Twitter feed, and it was posted on BAP's Telegram as well. I get you that link. And it describes this figure of the assaulted intellectual. It's better to just post the article rather than me killing a bunch of air on here trying to mangle its thesis to you.
Well, I think like to go more to like what we're talking about, it's like what Hulbeck said about the whole event, how it's driving a lot of trends that we're already seeing. One of them being this sort of hyperreality of the online world bleeding into people's lives, bleeding into the everyday more and more. It seems that more people are accustomed to what things are like being a terminal internet dweller more than ever before. And I wonder if that is going to like have a dramatic effect on a lot of different things. I mean, everyone in this chat is like a veteran of it, but like for the average person, I don't know. I mean, if the same rules of engagement of like Web 1.1 even apply anymore, because now people are starting to treat things like Twitter as real life. So I don't know,
But that goes back to my original question, which is, if the economy is going down the pipes right now, what exactly is going to happen.
The Great
to
Depression
this,
with an internet hookup.
Yeah,
That's like,
what is going to happen to all these things that the pearl clutching or toe tapping, however Styx likes to call them, the bracelet jinglers of the world. Like, what are they going to do?
I'm sorry for being obnoxious and butting in, but I hope to God we get to a point where we could no longer ignore discussing like how everyone is quietly panicking and has the shifty eyes whenever they go out, even for grocery shopping. Because like, all right, identity politics is a great way to sublimate time and energy from the left, so no existing power structures are threatened, which is why you have multinationals espouse the same things people chant with their stinking breath when they go out and protest before it turns into full-scale riots. Wealth is the one true privilege, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, identity politics does whatever it can to prevent discussing how wealth can buy you privilege and all these other magnificent impacts that wealth and access to wealth can have in someone's life. Alternatively, QAnon was like the right-wing equivalent of identity politics, and I think things have to get bad to where like you can't ignore the writing is on the wall until people start like discussing, like, I mean, I'm not saying we're gonna have another Occupy Wall Street, but look at Occupy Wall Street. Like, it was the first thing to ever invoke wealth and income disparity, and then it got infiltrated and subverted, and then the progressive stack happened. And now, unless you're like a club-footed, disabled refugee from overseas, how dare you speak and have an opinion? Get in the back of the line. And that facilitates the deck chair moving song and dance that I was talking about earlier. Like, and when this occurs on the hyper reality of like Twitter, or the inability to distinguish online from off, like it just like it's like a bad what's the word I'm looking for? It's like Groundhog's Day, but you never get the good ending. It's like that.
Well, when it comes to the progressive stack, I gotta say this is the kind of progressive stack that I think Thinkwert would appreciate. For the audio-only people, there's like puppies that are stacked one on top of another. They're alive though. They're alive. They're just sleeping.
And they're slowly getting larger as you scroll down.
Yes, that is very cute.
Oh yeah, they are getting larger. Wow, that's crazy.
But the progressive stack works when, even though it was pretty bad during 2000 and 2011 it was not as bad as 2007, during the recession. But when if things become really, really bad, would the progressive stack, would that kind of stuff even be able to hold on? It just seems like people would have other priorities then.
Well, I don't know if anyone remembers, but like last year from March until the passing of George Floyd, there was like a quiet period where it felt entirely absent from online discussion. And there was this feeling of like, wow, only people who could afford to have these politics and views can hold on to them and maintain them. There was like this weird period of like, I remember in March when everything shut down, it was so weird to like walk through blocks of Queens and Brooklyn and Manhattan and like, I mean like the middle of the street where cars would be. Like, like when you play an RPG and you keep expecting like dramatic music to appear and you got ambushed by ogres, or like, in a horror movie, you make a right turn and now the living impaired are all shuffling towards you. I kept expecting that at every block and every corner. But it was like, I've never seen my city so quiet and desolate. And that was the only time I ever remember all the buzzword, catchphrase, verb, the adjective, noun, song and dance, semantic jujitsu, and verbal judo games that people like to play. It didn't exist. And then George Floyd passed away. And it's like someone hit the reset button or someone hit New Game Plus, So I think... not to be cynical, but like there will always be a distraction on deck. There will always be something that people will obsess over. There will always be something that trends on Twitter that sucks away time and energy from like, wow, anyone notice how bad things are right now?
I want to get also Thinkwert's take on this as well. I know the conversation kind of shifted shifted away here.
Let's go away
Yeah.
from the usual like politics of the day.
Yes.
I don't know. There's only so much you could say without total doomer posting, I guess.
But no, with
kinda-
with the example of Thinkwert, once again, we're not going to dox. I mean, we can't dox because I have no idea where he lives. But in general, you were mentioning that your college is, let's say, more of a conservative type. Would you say that there was more, I don't know, like a feeling of we're all in it together, kind of like family-related stuff during the whole pandemic when it started? Like, what was the environment for you like?
We still had physical classes even during the worst of it. A lot of separation, some Zoom classes. I never taught on Zoom, but I think it was mostly kind of a soldier through it kind of thing. We're pretty much off masks on campus this time around. Students can wear them if they want to, but I'd say 1 out of 100 students will wear a mask. Most people are. It's mostly back to normal for us today. And for as far as campus culture, it was kind of the thing we went through for 1 year, and now we're going to try to get back to normal.
And when it comes to learning, like we already talked about the kids in your class, you know, being a good bunch of people, no real problems there. But when it comes to the capacity to learn, do you notice any differences at all between just like even the style of learning, the generation, let's say Gen X and Geo? I could hear you typing.
So between sorry.
Between Gen
I'm in the
X,
middle of World War III out there, to quote Tony
man.
Soprano.
Between Gen X and and the boomers, you know, like your parents and the generations that are in college right now.
Man, I wish I had something more profound to say. I don't think I've really seen a sea change in the students. I teach a lot of English majors, but I also teach some gen ed classes. And it does seem that the gen ed classes are having a few more students who are not quite college ready, but I think that might be because our college just has kind of lowered some of its standards about who gets in. It's just kind of a local change. But my best students are as good as they've ever been and as bright as they've ever been. So I'm fairly optimistic, at least about my little corner of the world. I'm pretty happy with the crew that I've got.
Do we have anything that we can, let's say, historically compare it to? Like we could say that it's great what's going on right now with you and your students. Is it the historical norm, the particular standards, have the standards risen? Have the standards fallen when it comes to, I don't know, like the education that George Washington or Thomas Jefferson would have gotten back in the day? Obviously, we find a lot of examples of people who didn't even know how to read, you know, back then. So I wouldn't say that I'm looking back at those days as saying like, oh, they were so smart. But then again, it does seem like they had certain qualities of perception that people don't have today. I don't know. It's difficult for me to say. I don't know if we can prove it one way or another. What do you think?
Yeah, again, I'm afraid I don't have an intelligent opinion on here. I do worry that some of my students are not maybe as self-directed, that they need a little more hand-holding than perhaps they did in a previous generation, or expect things to be kind of made explicit in a way I would not know how to do before, or kind of helplessness and a lack of resilience. But I would say it's been so much that I filled with a sense of, boy, the future's in trouble. Yeah, I really don't have many complaints.
Well, that's good. I mean, this, I think, is the silver lining that a lot of people are missing. I think it's something that is within any community on Twitter that needs things to complain about. We're always seeking to find out what are the worst things, you know, like you go on 4chan and just like, oh, all this is going on and that, and it's all just horrible and terrible, and this is good. But do you think that there is something today with people who are seeking out the worst, the ugliest things possible, and there is something like kind of like an addiction that people start getting, which justifies their worldview of seeing, everything in the past being better and everything in the present sucking.
Yeah. Kind of taking a little different spin on it. One of the things that I like to, occasionally I have a meme, a self meme that I made up, where I'll post two contrasting pictures of Whimsy Twitter versus politics Twitter. That kind of tends to be the two big ones. And politics Twitter is always crabs in a bucket, pulling each other down, fighting each other, zero sum. Let's just I can't win unless you lose. My tribe has to win. Just the kind of the viciousness and pettiness of politics Twitter. And so then I'll have the Whimsy Twitter, that's the oasis, the breath of fresh air, the stuff that's not that. And I think I try to get a little bit of that with the Thinkwert Twitter, where it's not about the vicious battles of the moment, but things that are a little more universal, a little more step back, which isn't to say they're always cute or adorable or twee. I try to avoid being too twee in there. I see some examples there. So Whimsy can be dark sometimes, but that's kind of the spirit of what I'm trying to do against that crab bucket.
I'd like to say that Thinkwert, I've always found it strange how, like what Lev mentioned, that like always finding the worst, and that works both ways, and we're like, always wanting to find the biggest or the best, or like, but it ends up turning into like the gaudiest, and it's almost like there's no middle ground anymore. And like, that's like one thing I tweet from time to time is there's a park near where I live, and there's like the Hellgates Bridge and the Triborough Bridge. And sometimes you'll get these beautiful views where you see like one bridge behind another off in the distance. And I'll take a picture of that and I'll go, sometimes it's okay. Like, it doesn't have to be super hyperkinetic, mega awesome all the time. And it also doesn't have to be doom and gloom. Everything is on fire. No one wakes up and smell the noise. Like, sometimes it has to be okay. Like, if there's no middle ground as a presupposition, then like everything is just up in the air and either always awesome or always terrible, So like, your Twitter seems to come from, I don't want to say it comes from that place, but it seems to like, sometimes it's like a reminder. It's like, I'm sorry if this sounds corny, Thinkwert, but like sometimes your tweets are like reminders to just breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth for a moment before resuming the scroll, reply, like, scroll. I hate that guy. He's wrong, and I'll tell him why. So, but Lev, like, I'd like to expand.
Don't
on
care,
that
loser.
Yeah,
Define loser.
and like you mentioned, Thinkwert, like it's like like victory at the expense of someone else. Like that weird, like, not to beat a dead horse, but all right. Like, long story short, like I made a flyer out of a tweet. January 29th, I tweeted, screen cap this, 10 to 15 days world quarantine, major supply line disruption, world recovery in 3 years. And like every once in a while, someone will like circle back to that and be like, wow, look at the date. And then sometimes someone will be like, actually the world quarantine happened 2 months after that, sweetie, you're welcome. And it's like, yeah, that doesn't invalidate every other thing I got right and the reality you're currently living in. And it's just always like this weird cutting off, like, and again, like without an okay, without a middle ground, without some zero neutral state, it's always like lavish, drooling praise, or I hate you and wish the worst on you and yours. There's never, and you could clear, and I think politics Twitter is the best example of that.
So ZHP had to go. Thank you, my brother, for coming on. He had to cut off. But Lev, you answered. Asked about education. Sorry, I'm just middle of World War III out there. I wonder. But I won the war recently, so don't worry about it online. I wanted to ask Thinkwert. I guess what Lev, a more like articulate question, not articulate, a more like new.
Wait, what are you saying?
A more specific question. would be, I guess, like the typical Harold Bloom, Strauss sort of, our students, if we run them through the Western canon, and of course there's a huge debate right now in literature studies of what constitutes the Western canon, but are you of the agreement of like that much older, like Harold Bloom mindset, that the Western canon, if students were to be exposed to the classics, that somehow our sense of civilization itself could be restored? Or do you think that every particular time period has its own like episteme, and that these crop of writers and literature that expose particularly English students, that it's always going to be subject to change, and it's sort of, maybe it's all right if we give them works of literature that is sort of a generous interpretation would be to speak to their like current situation. I had friends in lit studies, and a lot of books about the 80s and stuff like that, of one particular crisis. But so I wonder though, like, do we have to like return to the classics, or do you think that ship has sailed, and that maybe it's good that we're exposing like, you know, I mean, I'll be honest, like when I was in politics, the classes that came after, my friends would tell me that they would like give them articles from like, you know, Vice or whatever to analyze instead of like actual works of literature. So I don't know, maybe I'm being too generous here, but what are your thoughts in general, like in just the pedagogy of like what students are reading? Yeah.
I think there's got to be some balance between what I'll call the canon, Shakespeare, Faulkner, the best. What's the best that's ever been written? And if a student goes through an English degree and has not read the best, then there's something that's happened wrong. That was very, very wrong. Even if it's not familiar, if it's not comfortable, even if it's from a time and a place where they believe things that are kind of icky for us now, you got to read it. It's the best of the best. But I also think there's a place for anthropological. I tell my literary students, you need to read the King James Bible. I don't care if what your religion is, you need to read it, because it's so key to understanding where literature came from. Or the Book of Common Prayer is something that every person who's serious about English literature should read, because it's so influential, so deep in the roots. But I think you also want to know, you want to read things that are from the subgroups. So what things are from minorities that are not underrepresented, but also you want to read things that are just what was popular in 1840. What was the number one bestseller? And what does that tell us about it? If this short story is forgotten today, but it was huge then, well, that's interesting. Why was it so big then, but forgotten now? Or why has this, Herman Melville wrote this obscure Moby Dick, couldn't sell anything, but now it's a canon classic. So my overall point is, you do a disservice to students if it's just the canon. I think you need a little more history. You need a little bit of those background voices. You need a little bit of just anthropology. What was that culture like? What did they read? And if you understand the culture of 1950s, you might understand the culture of 2020 better. But you also just need to get that canon there. You need the best of the best. And I don't care if you don't like Mark Twain, you need to read Mark Twain. And some of that is put in there. And that's always kind of the knife edge of what I try to do, is making the students read the stuff that's uncomfortable, but at the same time, if you teach just that top 20 greatest hits of all time, I think you're missing stuff too.
There is a quote from hold on, Gio. I just want to give you this quote, and then I'm going to then Gio, go for it. I know the gears are turning, but here is a quote from Seneca. A multitude of books only gets in one's way. So if you are unable to read all the books in your possession, you have enough when you have all the books you are able to read. So he leaned on there being far fewer, maybe sometimes even just one book that you would kind of read over and over again and get way more out of it than trying to just read like the entire list. Do you think that that is something that was ever the case with people? Is this just some fancy thing that Seneca saw as the ideal? Or do you think that actually does change a person when they do stick to, like, they could read some stuff on the side, but they still have like a particular book or like a few books that they just stick with, and that kind of raises up their level a bit?
I mean, it's the coward's answer, but it's about a balance, right? Yeah, I think a life of just reading the same 10 books would be pretty poor. But at the same time, if reading 10,000 books, you're probably better off reading some of those classics a second time, a third time, a fourth time, a fifth time, rather than reading whatever is the top bestseller of the moment. So my comments from students at the end of the semester, they're anonymous. They tend to say, I think we read too much, which is good. I want them complaining about we read too much rather than Professor Thinkwert doesn't make us read enough. So I suppose on the continuum, I'm a little bit towards the let's get sort of a maximal exposure. But yeah, absolutely getting reading a great classic for the fourth, fifth time is probably better than reading whatever is the number one bestseller of the moment.
And Gio, I know the gears were turning, so.
Oh no, I wanted to, like, a follow-up question would be the just like what's predominant in terms of like writing style in like literature today, because I mean, knowing people that are like independent publishers and book people, it's like pretty dismal, the quote unquote industry. But there's this term that goes around a lot, what do they call it, MFA lit, where it's like literature that's like very concise and to the point, and a lot of it's like hyper political, but it's like kind of written like by grad students for grad students.
Oh god.
And I wonder if that like there was a bunch, like in the 2010s, there was like the confessional thing that was really popular, but I guess that's become like too uncomfortable now. It's like a more of a older millennial thing, such as my generation. But I wonder, like, do you see, like, in the actual like literature industry, are things changing, or is it still like largely grad students writing stuff for other grad students?
My big controversial meta opinion is that I think kind of the culture's juice, as in where the culture really is putting its energies into the down, the dirty, the common thing. It's not novels, not anymore. It was, but that's not where it is now. That's not movies even. Where is it? I mean, YouTube, TikTok, I don't know. I don't know where it's coming from, but I think that heyday has come and gone, where it's peaked. Just like we don't have epic poems anymore, written for the mode of the Iliad or Paradise Lost. Its moment is gone. The common kind of sonnet poem, that's gone.
Oh yeah.
So is the novel. It's going. I mean, there's still going to be some good stuff, but the peak is past us, and I don't know what's coming next. There will be something next. The technology will drive it, and that's what's coming. Again, maybe a controversial opinion for an English professor.
Oh, and also I know.
I'm sorry to just keep like Thinkwert. Another question. Thinkwert. Another question. I don't mean to like bombard you like this, but like, question. Do you think that even younger generations who had nothing to do with like Patti Smith's Just Kids, who are like so many generations removed from that, or like people looking back at the art and writings of previous eras, like granted to some degree they're looking at it through the lens of nostalgia, but do you think because the down and gritty and dirty that used to be found in books, like, all right, say what you will about Bukowski and being a functional alcoholic, he wrote about misery and suffering and the idle day-to-day thoughts of the grinding existence of like the hell that is life with no direction, like,
He's canceled now, Stained. He's canceled.
Yes, we're gonna
He
cancel
is problematic.
We're gonna cancel every dead man.
TikTok
from here.
canceled Bukowski. That's
but it's weird because like the gritty down and dirt, I guess it was much more common in writing in previous generations, but like now, like Gio said, grad students writing for grad students, like, do you think, I guess my question is this, like, do you think, like, even like I'm like I all right, do you think people are looking at the books of yore that were gritty and grimy and dirty, like, do you think people are returning to such art and media and books because, like, where I live in New York City, we're on the way back to cesspool, so maybe some people are subconsciously bracing for like gritty getting screamed at by mentally impaired vagrants and looking both ways before crossing the street in broad daylight, like,
life in hard mode.
Yes, like, you know, what, okay, let me rephrase this and stop running my mouth like a jerk, all right? Thinkwert, do you think there is a return to even younger people so far removed from like the 70s and 80s reading stuff like Just Kids by Patti Smith, or like, you know, the life at, like, Bukowski fictionalizing how messed up his life was? Do you think that, like, people, like, do you think there's like, it's missing, but people want it, so because there's no present version of it, they're going back for older examples of this? Do you think that's
I could see that. I definitely do think there's something kind of insular about the common, or what's being written and published nowadays. One of the things I talk about in my class is that the great writers needed to be insider outsiders. And what I mean by that is that they needed to be within the scope and the know of the powers that be, that they knew how to kind of speak their language, but they needed to be outside of it. You could not be in the elite circle and really make something great. You had to be the guy, the Machiavelli on the outside, trying to get back on the inside. And so you wrote something that was ambitious and powerful. You had to be the Milton who was on the outside you knew the language, you knew the vocabulary, but you weren't part of them. And I think the part of the problem is that the people that are in the power are writing, the people that are in the social graces are writing, and you can't do that. They're insiders.
Well, what about somebody like Leo Tolstoy? He came from an aristocratic family. You could say that he was still among the nobility. So would he be an exception? I'm sure there are exceptions. But like you take a look at the British Romantics, who was big with them? They were all insider outsiders. They're all guys from outside of London. William Blake was just an engraver. These guys were not in the echelons, the top of the top. And there have been some cases, but I think you need to have that knife's edge balance of, I know the language, I know the vocabulary, I know how they think, I know how to get in their graces, but I'm on the outside. And so I've got to try to push and pull and bring in something from the outside into that world in order to really make something. And those are the guys that tend to last. Those are the guys that tend to break through.
Weren't a lot of them like embarrassed aristocrats? Like they sort of lost their grip, like Bish Shelley or
temporary embarrassed
Byron.
Millionaires.
Yeah, like Byron, he was like an embarrassment to the aristocracy for a while, if I recall. So
he was definitely an outsider, a fringe of the fringe for them, even though he came from some kind of privilege and he grew up really, really poor. He a few convenient deaths happened and he got his title at the end. So he did not grow up on the insides. He kind of found himself on the inside suddenly, but he still had that outsider point of view, I'd say.
That was like Caesar, if I recall. His family was noble, but yet he grew up in poverty or in the sort of gentry class.
Well,
but it's
Caesar also used to love wearing all these robes. Yeah. Like that was kind of like the gangsta style of the time, just like these long flowing robes, kind of like the saggy
they
pants
had their
of
own
the day.
signifier. But it's funny, like I tweeted the other day, I think it was Michael Millerman, professor, that asked, because that god-awful Anthony Fantano tweet came up, but what is the nature of art? And I said, well, good art is very similar to what you said, Thinkwert, like it's produced in the condition of being within the sort of how shall I say, in like the new sphere of a particular civilization, but it has to stand outside of it, or it has to be it can sort of give a space, almost like the way that the shaman was formulated by various ethnographers, is like being like allowed to like step behind the fabric or the curtain of a particular society while still like being a part of it. Because I think like the outsider rebel is sort of like a modernist pastiche that has been with us since like very recently, at least like maybe 19th, 20th century. The role of the artist was much, or the writer was much different than what like most people believe in, sort of like a pop culture, like total outsider, rebel without a cause sort of thing, you know.
But by the way, we have a comment. We have a comment from Franz who says Byron did not grow up poor. So let's see.
I'm sorry if I could just chime in real quickly. Sorry to keep beating this dead horse about Bukowski.
The horse is probably right now just like powder. Right now, you're just taking the powder.
The horse is like Pyomai right now. It's been immolated.
The horse has been beaten into 1 trillion single cell organisms. Okay, it's because like Bukowski is really inspiring to me because like he was. All right, like it's easy.
That's not a good thing, Stain. I don't think that's a very good. He inspires you.
Not in the sense that he was a functional alcoholic. Just that, like, yeah, it's easy to write him off as like some.
Well, he was a Chad, though. He was a Chad.
Yeah, and his ex-girlfriends and his ex-wife talk about how like no one ever brings up that he used to spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day in front of the typewriter, and he had no formal education, but like, all right. To me, this is the mark of a true artist. I never met Bukowski. He died when I was a kid, and he wrote a poem called The Laughing Heart. And the first time I read that poem, I cried because it spoke to something that I could not articulate but knew to be true. And I feel that, perhaps that is the mark of a true quote unquote mark of an artist, when they could put something out there that outlasts them. And a stranger could walk up to it and look at it and go, that's exactly what it's like, And on top of that, like he once said in an interview that like young hotshots who get famous on their first book, they end up going to these like cocktail parties where it's all empty cotton talk, and then all they write is empty cotton talk. And he's like, like they're writing to the people they're around. And Bukowski was like, that's why I got so much material. I lived a crappy life. And like, I hate to admit it, but like, all right, like I worked at a pizzeria for 4.5 years when I was going to school nights and weekends. I saw things and did things in that pizzeria no writer's room could ever come up with, okay? And I believe Thomas Wolfe has a point. Everyone has a story to tell, But I think like the weird pampered writing to who you're around and clinking cocktail glasses, like, I think writing has become so far removed from everyday life at this point. Like there are barely any like, because of course no one wants to watch a movie about a guy sitting at the edge of his bed with his face in his hands, struggling how to pay the bills. No one wants to watch.
There are some movies like that though, and some of them are quite interesting. But those are like indie, like very few people have.
Right.
Well, you could say we had something, again, back to Tolstoy, we had something like War and Peace, where there was more of an emphasis on what the higher echelon of society was going through. But back in the day, they actually had to go through something very substantial. There were a lot of problems that they were faced with. One of them ended up in Russia when it was taken over by the French and tortured and all kinds of horrible stuff. So I guess it's like, if we don't have that kind of pressure to fight against, then there's not really going to be that much to create unless we kind of create our own internal pressure. Maybe that's why there's such a focus on mental health today on a lot of Twitter accounts, because they're trying to kind of like, that is where the pain and suffering is coming from. But there was a period, correct me if I'm wrong, Thinkwert, there was a period in the 18th century when life was not as bad for a lot of the well-off people. You had a lot of people ended up buying the farm, doing themselves in because of boredom, because of, I don't know, like, there was a term for that. I don't remember what the term was. Do you know what I mean?
I'm not familiar with that, no.
Ennui?
Maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe you're right, Gio. 'Cause
Malaise?
Malaise. Yes. it
Yeah,
may have been
ennui.
some-
That's the yeah.
So what exactly was that, Gio?
Ennui is like sort of like listlessness and dissatisfaction with the current order of things. Feeling of listlessness, dissatisfaction will rise among, oh wow, the dictionary, I memorized it. Lack of occupation or excitement in life. He succumbed to ennui and despair. So yeah, that.
Yeah, well, doesn't that
was like the
speak a
18th
little
century,
bit?
the 19th century decadent, like Lautrec paintings type style.
But doesn't an aspect of that also speak to what's going on right now on the internet?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh, well, if I could, this is something I'd like to ask Thinkwert, because the rise in people discussing mental health, I could be wrong, all right, but like Thinkwert has been on this planet longer than any one of us, so his perspective is grounded in what he's seen and lived and witnessed, all right, and thus respect your elders or else, all right.
What are you saying about Thinkwert's age, Stain Haynes?
Because
You're saying he was made before the light bulb, like Feach Lamont?
No,
That's
well,
three Sopranos references this episode. Holy crap.
It's just that, like
He was made before the light bulb.
Thinkwert had a front row seat to watching people go from like living life to living life permanently. See, you got your screen right there. You're in front of a screen and you picked up a smaller screen. You see, Gio, that's the point I'm trying to make. Like, Thinkwert, do you think that the rise in people having mental health issues has to do with like being bombarded by screens all the time, and how like there's no peace and quiet anymore, and how like people by default can't sit still for 5 minutes without like hell, people eat while scrolling crap on their phone. People take their phone with them to the bathroom. People, and like, you know what, I believe that like, when we have those aha moments and something bubbles up from the subconscious, and you could call it an epiphany or whatever, like the brain needs peace and quiet for the subconscious to manifest and push through. And without that peace and quiet, we're just running off of like base level, brain activity where like people want to achieve inner peace and meditate, but they can't eat without looking at their phone. Do you think the rise in mental health and discussion of mental health, do you think one reason for this is because we're all permanently plugged into this thing, whether we like it or not?
Yeah, I'm hesitant because I certainly have no expertise in this area. I definitely like that when I have to wait for my wife when she's shopping, I have my phone on me. Whereas in generations past, I would just have to sit there and wait and stare at the sky. But you wonder how you can have a society in which people are looking at a screen constantly from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed, and it doesn't affect things. I think it has to have some effect. How and how pernicious and how damaging and what to do about it, I don't know, but it seems to think that you can't have such a society-wide change without there being some kind of consequence to it in the long run. Again, I don't want to have to give up my phone, but I could definitely see that it could have some repercussions. Yeah.
Well, before you were talking about, actually speaking of novels, since novels were mentioned before, I just wanted to quickly read. This is from the Napoleon book that I sent to Gio as a present. So it says over here, Napoleon asked his savants to give lectures for his officers on deck during the voyage. This was the one to Egypt. In one, Junot snored so loudly that Napoleon had him woken up and excused. He later discovered from his librarian that senior officers were mostly reading novels. They had started out gambling until everyone's money soon found itself in a few pockets, never to come out again. He pronounced that novels were for ladies' maids and ordered the librarian only give them history books. Men should read nothing else. He was apparently overlooking the 40 novels, including English ones and French translation, he himself had brought out. So there we go, a little bit of a hypocritical part here. But in general, during that period, novels were pretty popular. But I wonder if there could be, like you were talking about, an idea of what was popular during certain epochs, would you still say that whatever was popular was still of a higher standard than just some TikTok booty dance or whatever that people are watching right now? Or would you say that it's always been the case that, like, the crapalicious stuff was always the stuff that was the most popular among the masses? The reason why I'm asking is I'm still trying to gauge, were the masses, quote unquote, the masses, like the majority of people, were the majority of people always kind of at the same level regardless? Or were there times where, let's say, maybe not the majority, but like the middle class was more educated, was more well-read, and is that part kind of going downhill, and how do we know that that's the case?
I tend to be a little suspicious about narratives of decline, not to say that there aren't, but they tend to be a little bit too convenient for people who are nostalgic for a certain past. Certainly there's a winnowing that there's a lot of junk that was written in the 1700s that has not survived, and what survived tends to be generally better than what didn't survive. If you were to take a look at what TikToks people are still watching 5 years from now, probably a better sense of what was the really good TikToks and not just the ones of the moment. But as far as eras being better or not, it does seem that there's moments in time where you have a collection of geniuses, a collection of something that's really special in a certain place at a certain time. You think of Milan with is it Milan? Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, and or London around 1600 with Marlowe and Shakespeare. There's just these tiny little moments at certain localities where there's little explosions of creativity, amazing things that happen, and it'd be interesting to think about where that would happen next. Where in the world is that next explosion of creative genius is going to come from?
I'm a little worried that, like, I think some people prepare themselves as if like they're expecting to be in that explosion when they have their creative output. And like, I'll give you an example. Like, I was hanging out with a cousin of mine who's younger, and he talked about how like people leave the house. Like he's like 22 years old, and he's like, people leave the house in like every day in such elaborate outfits. Oh, just in case someone sees me in public and takes my picture and I get famous on Instagram. It's like, that's a weird thing to center your outfit around every day you leave the house. And I think some people put things out there expecting like, this is going to get me famous. And it's like, nah, you presumably you have to hack away at this and fail a few times and get like the bejesus kicked out of you until you finally get your art form together and you can like execute. All right. But I think, but like in regards to that like small explosion, excuse me for using such an example, but like take Ghostbusters. It was lightning in a bottle. Like the right cast, the right director, the right script, and like the chemistry every time someone went action.
We are, of course, talking about the 2016 one.
I demand satisfaction, and we're going to settle this with pistols when the stream is done, Lev. Okay, but like obviously that or like The Thing by John Carpenter, like it has endured so long, and it's considered by some to be the greatest horror movie of all time, even though when it first came out, it flopped. So I think Thinkwert, do you think that like part of the reason there's such an abundance in mediocrity is because like artists out the gate, it's kind of like
it's a democratization of art, in my opinion, as controversial as it is.
And also,
there's more mediocre.
And also, since you mentioned The Thing, I just wanted to shout out Thinkwert's tweet. You're
I
the thing,
love that
Charlie
tweet.
Brown.
Yes, that's exactly why I brought it up. Okay. I just think that like, okay, thank you, Gio, because I'm not good word talk express thought.
Well, it's not just the mediocrity. I think of like the democratization of art in that everyone can become one and post online. I think that it's because Instagram is like the worst, and only using Instagram for art posting, so I can one day grift and sell some things. Finally, it seems like you're subject to like the metrics of what people find appealing, which usually like degrades into kitsch, either through like in terms of literature, or in terms of like visual art, because it's like, what are people going to read? Are they going to read an actual novel by some like undiscovered like the second coming of Norman Mailer, or are they going to read like Rupi Kaur that has like a very punchy oh god, I used the worst example, but you know what I mean. It's like the algorithm in some ways determines the quote unquote quality of the work, because it's much easier that way.
Philip Daniel had a good comment here. Used to be that every middle class woman learned piano, and that bourgeois households would entertain themselves by playing chamber music and singing art songs that mostly ended after World War I. Now, again, I can't go back in time and know if that was exactly the case, but if that, let's say, was the case, I bet that would have some kind of a positive effect just on how a person thinks when that's something that they're kind of forced to be exposed to because they don't have a smartphone. I don't know, like, that may factor into, let's say, why. I mean, this is just like a wild guess. Maybe that's why we look back at the 20th century and look at all these brilliant people that have existed, including Albert Einstein and Marilyn Monroe. Let's not forget her either. But it's like, like we have examples that we look at and we say, man, like these are like all these historical figures. What happened to them? Why aren't they around today? And again, this could just be complete ignorance on our part, living at a time when we don't actually know who the people are who are going to be read about in the future. But then again, part of me thinks that maybe there aren't that many people because Albert Einstein was known during his time. It wasn't like nobody knew about the guy, and then after he passed away, he became this, big celebrity. I don't see that much of those kind of, titans of industry, art, literature, whatever, existing today, even though I'm sure that they're out there. It doesn't seem, maybe it's because it's so fragmented. It just doesn't seem to be as prevalent in the mainstream consciousness.
Yes. No, no. All right. I think, well, in terms of things entering the mainstream conscience, I think, well, to touch on what HP Lovecraft had mentioned earlier and what I tried to haphazardly unpack, I think, like, it takes a lot of effort not to be like marooned on this digital island that is built on what you like and what you click and what you buy. And it's also built on getting ads for things you were talking about with your friends in the comfort of your own home. So then now, like, Lev is all like, buy my NFTs. And now, like, you're getting ads for drawing pads for PCs and, like, hey, Lev, here's some email spam about, like, super rare,
Levcards.com, superrare.com/Lev Polyakov. Okay,
invest in Lev.
Invest in Lev. I gotta start sending these out. They're gonna do some Halloween themed stuff. I gotta get on this real quick. We just moved, so there's a lot of stuff that I gotta do here. But anyway.
So just real quickly, things entering the collective I think like things have gotten so fragmented. I think that you have to sort of carve your own audience out, and unless you're propped up or backed by some institution, the positive side of the democratization, I probably messed that up. Feel free to point and laugh. Geo, I think that
more like democratization.
Well, I think it's that, like, despite all the doom and gloom, despite all the
democracy,
we could
Democracy. That was a good job for the Cowboy album. That was a really good album.
I think that, as long as you're not, as long as there is weight to what you put out there, like online, like take Twitter. If there is weight and if you have consistency, and hopefully this bleeds out to other things like music and like film or whatever, but the internet has sort of removed the middleman and the barrier of entry, where if what you do has weight and what it's good, people will mess with it and people will keep returning. to whatever it is you're putting out there. And in fact, I think like the unspoken rule is that like if you have 10,000 followers on Twitter, you could self-publish a book and have enough people that like your stuff that it'll kind of like stay afloat by virtue of like your audience and your like, you know, the auditorium that follows you wherever you go.
Yet
So,
when you
like-
promote it on Lit, they kick you out.
Yeah. Lev looking into the camera, told me everything I need to know about that. But no, I think, you know, like, well, I mean, for all the bad things, hell, for all the bad things we could talk about Twitter, it's how like we all got here on this call and on this stream, you know? So like, I think the removal of the barrier to entry, like, I think it makes it easier to find like a niche death metal, small, tiny community as opposed to like an arena rock community. I think like the literary and artistic versions of like arena rock are on the decline and like they're going to go the way of the dinosaur. And I think now it's just going to be like, you know, like I like the New York Times literary review is just going to be like self-indulgent tripe and lowest common denominator telling you things you already know so you could go, I really identify with this author so much. And I think now it's like, you know, there's going to be like Substacks and like and like what Thinkwert had mentioned earlier, like, you know, like YouTube is now like a way for people to like get their like artistic message or like their perspective across. So like, you know, I think the democratization, point and laugh, all right, joke of people, all right? Me no speak
No, but
English
I think
good.
like maybe it's, and this could be, because I think where you have to go soon, but I guess last we could talk about how the nature of literature has changed in itself in that it's like, I mean, literature has conformed to people's prejudices from time immemorial, but I think that nowadays it's almost like a demand that literature has to conform to some form of like enforced consensus, but not just like the usual like politics of it, but even beyond that. I think when it comes to it's like what Scorsese said about like cape shit films, that it's like become an amusement park. I think like literature has to in a way become an amusement park, not just politically like to conform to whatever like SJW standard there is, but like on a deeper level, I think that literature's coming out. It's not really like challenging to this modern subject, but it has to like satiate us in the way that like playing certain like mainstream studio video games does, or like watching a Marvel movie does, if that makes sense. It goes even beyond politics to the like base like culture industry deduction of like, you know, if Rupi Kaur talks about whatever, then oh sorry, my thing fell. What do you do? Oh yeah, my old man's got to bring in the cat food, because for those who don't know, we got a new cat recently from she's kind of skittish, so you know I have to keep her in my room for a little bit.
When are we gonna do the Israel debate stream with you and your dad?
I don't know. But you know what I'm?
Hey,
does
Gio's
that make
dad.
sense? Thinkwert is that like what I'm saying?
Pennacchietti.
He can't hear you because I have headphones.
I've never actually spoken to him on camera, so just say hi from Lev.
Oh,
and,
he's gonna go. Yeah, I'll say hi.
all right.
But yeah, so if that makes sense, like it seems that the novel, or rather like the novel is dying, but I guess literature itself becomes another amusement park of the mind. I don't know, maybe that's just too cynical, but
Yeah, I mean, again, we don't. It's one of those things that the winning of time is going to tell us if those MFA kind of novels will persist in 10, 20 years, or if they're just curiosities. I do know that sometimes we get those people who workshop things, they write so that the people that first audience will not get mad at them and be kind of happy. Not maybe super ecstatic, but at least mildly happy. And so you are playing it very safe in a very narrow kind of range, because you don't want to offend any of the 20 very hypercritical people who are first reading your novel. And so that limits what you're writing about, and writing's kind of, you get a little more solipsistic, a little more opaque, so that you don't have any surface area for people to attack. And I think that might lend itself to very safe, bland, uninteresting novels. But again, I think I wouldn't go so far as saying it would never be possible to produce something great from that. That just tends to be the errors they tend to fall for.
That was really well said. And by the way, speaking of writing, you have a Substack as well, and you make games on the Substack, which is not something that I ever thought Substack could be used for. Could you tell us a little bit about what these games are?
Yeah, they're actually tweet games. They're games of tweets that are chained together. I use Substack to share and kind of post them. I don't, no one pays me anything for those tweets. I think I did a lot more last year. I think I've only had 4 tweet games this year. But like the last one I did was called The Present, a puzzler where it's only 170 tweets, but I've had some games that are close to 1,000 tweets, where you make choices. So click on this if you want to open the door, or click on this if you want to look at the ceiling. So kind of those old school text-based games. I try to reproduce that with just tweets. And it's very tedious. I think the big one took me about 6 weeks, 3 or 4 hours every day. And finally got that together, posted that. And it really didn't do that great, but I still like them. I still enjoy doing them. This last one, I took a break from Twitter for about 10 days. And I spent most of it writing The Present, this puzzler that I wrote. If you do a search for chain tweets, I think it'll come up. Because I put the title in a different.
So I put in there squirrel ball over here. We got
squirrel
this,
ball, yeah.
This cute squirrel. By the way, actually, I was also wondering regarding the reusing of memes and stuff like that. Where do you get a lot of your content from? Is it kind of like all over the place? And have you ever had, let's say, somebody saying like, "Hey, this is my photo" or anything like that? Like, has that ever been an issue? I mean, usually on Twitter, it's not unless you get it from somebody in Japan. In Japan, they seem to really be very strict about that for some reason.
If I use an artwork, like a painting or like a really photoshopped, I try really hard to give it a citation. A lot of the photos are kind of the stream of the mass media memes, just a random photo. Not really. And I don't usually have people come up to me and say, "Hey, that's my photo. Give me some credit for it," unless it's of a particular person, right? It's a photo of a person who wants something. And I'm always happy to say, "Okay, sir, yeah, they made this photo here, happy to credit it." But I generally don't do that.
And what about the memes themselves? Like, do you get them from Instagram, from Facebook, from just like all over the place? Is there a specific place you'd recommend if we want to find some good memes?
For memes, I mean, just Twitter meme sphere, I guess. I don't really have a specific one. I tend to try to make my own jokes rather than kind of snow clone off of a current meme. Although I had one last night. That was a meme about the dinosaur sign. It's a snow clone based off an old meme, an old tweet. My sign is asking a lot of questions already answered by the sign. I think it was the tweet that I posted last night. But generally, no, I try to kind of do my own stuff and not just rely on the same well-trod ground. That tends to be kind of boring if you just ape the same memes over and over again. Not that I'm above it. I'll do it sometimes. But yeah, I do better when it's kind of trying to create my own thing.
And there was also a 199th super chat from Lisa Bode. Thinkwert, what are your pronouns?
He, him, I guess.
There we are. So thank you so much, Thinkwert, for coming in. I really enjoyed this conversation. I really appreciate all the things that you are doing on Twitter. We need more levity in this world. We need, we need more levity in this world. But we also
oh my God.
but we
Stop.
yeah, well, this is why it resonates so much.
To quote Ralph Cifaretto, I'm trying to give some fucking levity in this situation.
And also number 4.
And also, I want to do a shout out to Nemal Cutie, who I think also resonates with your kind of energy. Who came first, by the way? Were you on Twitter before Nemal Cutie?
I believe Nemal predates me and is frankly much better than I am. So
Oh,
I'm
come
always
on, that's-
eternal. That's why.
Poppycock. But before we all disperse, Thinkwert, I remember you once tweeted something to the effect of like an "Ask Me Anything," and I asked you how you met your wife and how you came to be a family man where you find yourself now, and I'm probably butchering this, but you said something to the effect of like you focused on yourself, then you improved on yourself, and you worked on yourself, and you tried to actualize the things you thought about and worked on, and that meant a lot to read, and that's something I don't think a lot of people, men in particular, hear enough, and that it still leaves an impression on me. So I just want to say thank you.
Sure.
And
Great.
and one time you posted a picture of yourself when you were a young man, and you legit looked like a troublemaker with his back against the wall at like a Fear Factory concert. You looked like trouble. You looked like Gen X trouble as a young man, and it reminded me of like my cousins, and like that I still think is hilarious. So
No, I was thoroughly nerdy. I was not trouble at all.
you look like a young John Swartzwelder without the mustache, but with a "what are you looking at?" like look on your face. But
I think it's just the Gen X energy that even the nerds back then, had it. So
I just thank you for being you, man. And I'm beyond fortunate we crossed paths from the Tournament of Anything Fist Philosopher held before the world went sideways. That put me in touch with like a bunch of people that, like, for lack of a better term, it's raised the quality of my life. So thank you for being you, dude.
Sure, thank you.
we have a great comment from Bulat Usmanov, who says, "Throughout this stream, I have learned that it's okay to be over 30." That should be like the new sign, on the white paper. It's okay to be okay.
Yeah.
So
I'll make a flyer of that, start putting it around my city. It's okay to be 30.
So there we go. Guys, before we leave, once again, the promotions. So we got over here, twitter.com/718TV. Follow Stained Haynes. Buy his shirt at queenstrash.com.
That's right. Spasiba for the best
Пожалуйста.
for the best public access television in the 21st century. Come on down to youtube.com/718TV. You could find my masked, mildly obnoxious, uncultured ass talking about things I have no frame of reference on at twitter.com/718TV. And reminder, the flyer to shirt pipeline is real, ladies and gents.
Yes. Well, speaking of asses, there's definitely a lot of those on queenstrash.com. Who are those women? Do you know those women? Can we get them on the stream? Can we get them? Can we get them to my estate? Can we bring them to my estate?
Well, in the true believers section in the gallery of people who took pictures of themselves wearing my shirts, both of those ladies I could probably get on Break the Rules. One is a gas station goth. One is gas station goth, and the other is expletive deleted jihad. It is a word for female anatomy. I'm not saying on stream because Thinkwert is making me already regret saying the word ass earlier. But both of them, I could hit them up for them to be on stream. The buxom ladies that you speak of that look like they came out of an 80s like car poster. You'd have to speak to their booking agent. I'm sorry, Lev.
And
I'm
there
sorry
was
to interrupt, but I have got to run.
well,
My
Thinkwert.
time's just about up.
Please follow
Thank you,
Thinkwert
Thinkwert.
on Twitter. Thank you so much for coming in.
Have a great
Thinkwert,
day, man.
Great
Thank
pleasure. Great pleasure to have
my
you
friend.
on.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So there was one final thing that I wanted to... Okay, 718TV, State Haynes, did you disable right-clicking on your site? What the fuck?
Oh, you mean on the pictures on the
Yes,
gallery?
yes.
Oh, yes, you have to do it the old-fashioned way and control print screen and open it up in MS Paint.
Yes, that's exactly
Oh,
what I
God.
did because I believe I have found I believe I have found the horse that you were beating, the dead horse that you were beating. Here it is.
I'd like
Wearing
I'd like-
the Respect Troops shirt.
As a matter of fact, okay, so quick little story about that shirt. A business partner and friend of mine, a gentleman by the name of Grift Shop, who I believe was on the stream.
Shout out to Grift Shop.
Respect the grift. Go to grift.shop. And he had a Chris Dorner shirt like this, but it had like the American flag in the background, and it said
is that the one that Frank Hassel was wearing?
Yes. Now what happened was, excellent eye, Eagle Eyes Polyakov. So the drop shipping company Grift uses took the shirt down, saying this individual incites violence and blah blah blah. So Grift and I were talking, and we kind of came to the conclusion: I screen print my stuff. You don't touch. You don't touch any of your merch. How about this? Like, no drop shipping, no censorship, no problem. I'll make the shirt. And that's how that shirt came into existence. That horse is a dying and rising god, so I will beat it until I continue to draw breath left.
Well, I was thinking you could beat it till it's powder, and then you could snort the powder, and maybe that's going to be what's going to protect you from the Backstreet Boys World Tour. That's the real cure right there. So
Mr. Hands powder.
Mr. Hands Pill. Literally, it'll be coming out with Mr. Hands Pills. And we also have a super chat from Tux.
They did have testosterone that came from horse. I remember a buddy that was a gym rat. He used to call them horsies because I think it was a trembolone they get from horses. I forget.
Yeah, well, that's quite a workout that Mr. Hands had. But Tux loves you. $5 super chat.
Oh my God.
And he says, sneed those super chats. That's right, people. Even though we're going to be ending this stream right now, we're going to have a lot of great streams coming up. I have finally moved. There's a lot of stuff here that has to be done. But as you can see, the internet's great. Looking out, seeing the birds chirping, and it's all good. Okay,
and let me know where I'm sending these shirts, Lev.
Yes, please. I shall. And also, Future of Dating, Tuesday, October 26th. So we have Steve Dean, who at whose party I originally met Jules at, and he's coming in. He is in polyamory, and we should also be having a default friend coming in for that one as well. Future of Dating, Tuesday, October 26th. And then there should be a special event for Thursday, October 28th.
We need like someone to balance that panel. We need like, I don't know, trad incel, trad incel arranged marriage griper 1488 or something. I don't know.
Maybe. We'll see. And then we have, okay, I'm not going to say Thursday, October 28th yet. We'll see what happens. November 2, video game culture. I'm going to try to make this one happen. So, okay, so not Lorenz. Lorenz is out, but the other two people...
You couldn't get Lorenz if you tried, though. It came to talking about Gamergate. That's the problem. It would be like...
Oh...
I have to. She's gotta get used to us. So,
I would love to get a Noah hug box. I would love to get
we named her
Noah
Gertrude after the saint of protector of cats, but
not after Gertrude Stein.
Oh, that could work too. But no, she's a bit scared. She's one of my old man's workers had a litter, so we just wanted a playmate for Hildy since Benito passed. But she's actually quite fucking vicious with Hildy. She like growls at it. So we gotta find a way, like we're gonna research like how to like get cats like, to become more friendly. Cause like Hildy tries to play with her, but then she just goes like she's not used to don't worry, Gertrude.
Aw, so cute.
I'm holding her because the door is open. I gotta go close it, Lev. So
yeah. So and then Thursday, November 4, Mary Harrington. Finally, we're gonna have Mary Harrington on, and then we are going to have Tuesday, November 9, Jessica DeLoach, who worked for Pete Buttigieg, together with Styx Hexenhammer 666, talking about the Democratic Party. That is going to be a hell of an episode. I'm very excited about that, and. We are going...
Isn't Styx debating Fuentes or something about China?
Yeah.
What the fuck does he know, like Fuentes know? Never mind. I promised people I wasn't gonna... but I don't know.
I don't know,
That
maybe-
seems
maybe
weird. I
he's
mean,
a-
he
maybe
could have
he's an
debated
agent.
Hayes or I don't know who is like a hardcore Maoist. Like
Other than logo.
yeah. Oh, Jason Unruh. We should get if we get Jason Unruh, I could just drive to Niagara Falls and like do it live with him. That'd be
And all
pretty.
We'll do it
funny.
live. We'll do it live. Fuck it.
In all fairness, though, I'm curious if it would ever be possible to get like a pro-Chinese, actual Chinese dude instead of like chinless white guys who like sing the praises of like
Oh,
Well,
that's
Hayes is
cold.
only
That's
half white,
cold.
so that's.
Okay, no, it's just like Lev. It always just.
Oh, you mean like the average like Maoist like tanky on Twitter?
Oh well, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, like if you were having someone from China on the stream off camera, there's like a gun held out, and as soon as they go against party line doctrine, it's like technical difficulties. Please stand by, and you hear a gunshot. Like
yeah.
I'm fairly certain there's like a divide there, but like, because like the pro-China people tend to be honkies who have never went a day in their life without, who have this weird warped view that like communism totally doesn't lead to hunger, misery, and need. And when you say things like, have you ever noticed China had so many famines, they had to name the worst one the Great Famine to distinguish it from all the other famines? And then they're like a blah, blah, buzzword catchphrase, verb, the adjective, noun, neo-colonial, imperialist, capitalist, a blah, blah, blah. And you never get anywhere with them. Like, so I'd like to believe there are pro-China people who don't fall under that category, but I've yet to meet them online.
It was weather patterns.
Hmm.
You know what was interesting?
Weather-
That's how they explain the Homodor weather patterns. You know who'd be interesting? It's like the equivalent of like the other ideology saying that like because the chambers don't reflect blue, it didn't happen. Anyways, never mind.
And by the way, for those who are talking about PPP, I have no idea who PPP is, but
People's Populist Press. I wonder
Okay.
if we could get him on, but he's been kind of maybe I don't know.
No, I want to do a thing right now.
A drama stream.
So for all the people who are watching this right now, if you know PPP, I'm not talking about getting PPP on the show. Specifically, here's what I want you to do, okay? Here is a link. I just posted the YouTube link to a song called Darling PPP by the J-pop singer Crystal K.
Oh, God.
So, by the way, what do you think of her, Gio? Check it out. This is
yeah.
Crystal K.
You know what would be good? We had her once, but if you wanted like interesting, like postmodern, post like Marxist type stuff. Do you remember Neko Girl? She has that.
Oh yeah,
e-zine.
yeah.
We should get her on. I wanted to get my friend Dasein on with Alexander Bard. That would be interesting because he's into a lot of
I have a. This is a little bit closer to Whimsy than arguing theory and praxis and all these things, but like Lev, there's a gentleman on Twitter I believe you should have on your stream, Fistlosopher. All right.
I heard of that guy. I think
I tried getting in touch with him. I think before. Let's see. Fist.
For starters, like one of the sharpest tools in the shed, and I met Thinkwert through like in so many words. I'll try to green text this, okay? He had a tournament, and it's called the Tournament of Anything, and where like when people are about to compete, they have to agree on the terms of like the duel, which means like a freestyle rap battle, rock paper scissors, speed running Super Mario World. Hell, the first event was how many countries can you name in the world under 10 minutes? And someone listed every single country on planet Earth in 4. And then one of the events was like, download this app. Walking loses. And like one guy.
Wait. Stain Haynes, you disappeared for a second. After you said download this app, then the audio disappeared. Can you
my
repeat
bad.
From there?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So like 2 people competed where they downloaded an app to measure the distance that they walked. And the competition was whoever stops walking first loses. So one guy got on a track and field, and after like 8 miles, he was like, I can't do this anymore. I give up. And the guy who won, he just walked out his house, made a left turn, and kept walking. And upon realizing he won, he's like, oh, man, I got to walk back now. battleship, writing a poem. Like, so hell, like who could post a funnier GIF? So people. Oh, and there was like a losers bracket. So if you lost, you still had a chance of winning the championship. And like this all ground to a halt because of Chinese lung herpes. And like I'm so like it's sad because like it's like the tournament that was but never finished, you know? And like I've had so number one, I always thought that was an incredibly sharp and lateral thinking example of someone using Twitter as something other than social media. He turned it into an IRL game with IRL consequences.
Yeah, that's like those rich like IT people, like the original Silicon Valley like rich kids. They were into like weird games, like pranking games and geocaching. And I think Atrocity Guide on YouTube had this documentary about some guy from MIT that went to work for Microsoft, had like this elaborate geocaching game where a guy like died in like the Sonora Desert or something like that.
Whoa,
So,
are
yeah.
you kidding me? So Lev, like that, because I hope to God we have another tournament of anything, because like it turned out like that's how I met Thinkwert. In fact, that's how I met like a bunch of people I became mutuals with and I've gotten to know, and like even met up with a few of them. And honestly, like they're all stand-up people. And it melted away a lot of what I used to think was hard-earned cynicism about the internet. And on top of all of that, Fist is such a sharp, amicable, hilarious dude and a perfect example that no dummy ever had a sense of humor. So you should get him on your program.
I think that would be a wonderful idea. I'm putting that into the
Put the
to-do
feelers
list over here.
out.
Yeah, putting the feelers
Look
out.
at the feelers on this guy. That's nice.
So guys, before we go, there's also another super chat from Lisa Bode. Shout out to Mr. Finesse. Love you guys. I don't understand that, but
Finesse.
Maybe. And Philip, I would love to have you on Break the Rules. You know what we're gonna do, by the way? We're gonna do a Patreon only stream coming up next week. This week, there's still a lot of stuff that I got to do on the side here, you know, unpacking the boxes and all that. Still, like, I had to. I've been, hopefully the echo has much improved, but I'm hanging more of those soft things, just covering the entire wall ceiling with them. I just had to hang a cloth on that side because I didn't have time. But anyway, guys, this is the end of the stream. Follow Geo at GiantGeo on Twitter, and also follow his YouTube at youtube.com.
And my Instagram, Giovanni Pennacchietti. But you can find, like, if you go to my Twitter, there's my link tree with everything.
Yeah, Geo, I only wish your surname was easier to spell.
Yeah, I know.
What are you gonna do?
coming out. I'm editing a video that's gonna have a bit more production about that recent tweet by, what's that account called, Going Godward, but it's about the artist Toulouse-Lautrec and how, like,
Ooh, nice.
but it's relevant to the
Toulouse-Lautrec. If it was Toulouse-Lautrec, he'd be leasing a car, but he ended up losing the car. Just like he lost certain parts of his GNA or whatever, so he ended up being a little bit screwed up bodily wise. But that was okay, because he was in the Moulin Rouge and he had a fun time. And
he was in. Well, it was about how he was painting various prosties, because it was about that thread by Going Godward that, like, people were absolutely decimating, like, for good reason, but, like, I thought people were too harsh on her about the relation of, like, the male gaze and like, instead of viewing women as, like, objects, but rather this sort of, like, older sort of chivalrous idea. But anyways, you'll see it when it comes out. It takes a bit to edit it, because, like, I film myself, and then it's like I'm new to having content that's not, like, gutter cheap, like, you know. So
oh, and lastly, guys, please tell me what exactly this noise is. There is a bird noise that I hear outside my window. I
hear people talking for some reason.
No, there's nobody talking. Nobody talking on my end at all. It is silent.
Man, weird. Maybe it's stained. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's the lobby of a Zoom call that, like, once I'm done hurrying up and waiting, I gotta put on a shirt and tie and keep my basketball shorts on. because Zoom calls don't exist below the waist.
Mhm.
I've just been on standby for one of those like, well, this month's budget, and 5% domestic, 1% international. Does anyone else have any comments on the last month's department ratings meeting and blah blah? I'm just waiting on that. So like, I have that on mute, so I could be here and tell Thinkwert, can you tell us more about how kids suck these days?
Yeah,
So-
well,
so-
I tried to get as much out of that, but apparently he's in luck. You know, he's got that silver lining that we're always yearning for. So God bless him and his students. So anyway, we are almost at the end.
yeah.
Once again, twitter.com/LevPo. Go there and become a part of what is about to happen with the Lev cards. Superrare.com/Lev Polyakov. I'm going to be launching the NFT soon. The crypto's going up. I got to make hay while the sun is shining, people.
Oh,
So-
speaking of cards, buy Lev's cards, but also my friends at the art collective Ergivore, they have their e-celebrity cards they just came out with. One of them is, of course, Paul Town, and there's a bunch of other ones. I believe Amy Therese is on there. I believe some other people, more nefarious people, are on there as well.
How do you spell their Twitter?
Ergivore, so like, you know, Ergivore, like, so ERG, so it's like Ergigor, the, you know, mental construct.
There
but
we
it's
go. I found
vor,
it, yes.
yeah, instead of gore. Ergivore. Yeah, it's a clever, it's like you create the entity that consumes you in a
I wonder,
erotic
though,
fashion.
In this, I see Amy Therese. Oh, look at the Amy Therese one.
Yeah,
this is
that
so
one
adorable.
got fucking bombed. I'm glad that my Amy Therese didn't get too fucking ratioed, but like that one got really fucking.
Why? It's kind of cute. I don't see why
Yeah,
that
but
one.
people they thought like it was terrible, and
Yeah, I don't know. People can be mean, but yeah, Ergivore. This is really cool stuff they're doing. Do they, by the way, share in any of the proceeds from the celebrities, well,
I think,
e-celebs that they?
no, I think like it goes to the artists themselves, but maybe like they get their permission to do it from people. I was thinking of doing one, but I just didn't have enough time, or well, you know.
Well, there we go, everybody. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was a wonderful episode of Break the Rules. Once again, huge thanks to Thinkwert for coming in here, talking with us, giving us wisdom. And this is it. This is the end of the stream. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Patreon.com/breaktherules. We got a new $30 patron, by the way. Very excited about that. All the way from Sweden, I believe. So
Ooh,
there we go.
invest in Lev, ladies and jerks.
Especially if we got to ship internationally, you better start investing in